Yeah, I want to talk about probably the strongest economic indicator out there that probably nobody really highlights that much. I did talk about it some months ago, and that is actually the retail sales of gasoline by refiners. Now, when you're thinking about gasoline, you might be thinking about personal consumption and that type of stuff, but it's also the trucking of all goods to like retailers. It's also telling a lot about net disposable income, like people driving someplace on the weekend and having fun and going out here and there or whatever, traveling to the mountains, traveling to the beach, traveling to the lake, whatever. And a lot of people aren't doing that. And actually, if you look at the chart, we've had a 75% drop in retail sales of gas, produced retail sales by refiners since the late 1990s. Now, I think the late 1990s was probably the apex of the American economy, right before the freaking, everything. Well, there's a couple different crashes that happened there. There was a tech crash, and, the market reset, and then there was 2001, and then there was a housing boom went on, and the housing crashed in 2007. But, when we're looking at the numbers today with the GDP, see, this is like where it's, a lot of it actually is government fueled. First off, you got the food stamps going to people, right? So that's one thing that gives them more disposable income, and everything's being, actually, when the government's spending all this money, it's subsidizing the economy and adding more and more to the debt. It's an obvious thing that's going on. But again, 75% reduction in retail sales of gasoline from the refiners since the 1990s, the late 1990s. Now, you can't account for that by the fuel economy of the cars. You're not talking about the 60s cars or something like that. The cars were already fuel efficient back then. But also, it doesn't just relate to like personal vehicle transportation. This also relates to the transportation of goods and services too. See, actually what's going on in the GDP, a lot of it, if you look at it, is the banking sector, profitability in the banking sector. So when they're telling you like the profitability, in other words, actually the 1 basis point is actually connected to the banking and financial centers, centers of the United States. The 1 basis point, the 1% of the 1%. So what actually happens here is that when you're talking about GDP, it's not really like none of it's getting into the middle class. And this chart, with the drop of the retail sales of gasoline, is pointing this out. And it's not just about it. It could be where people are driving to work. It could be for people who are driving for fun, but it's also for transportation of goods and services. So, like when we look at the GDP going up per the government, it could be the GDP of the pharmaceutical industry. And actually, that's been going up a lot. That's the second largest industry. That's the second largest industry, pharmaceutical industry, the medical industry, the banking and financial industry. Cell phones, things like that, electronic communications, internet services, things like that. The GDP could be going up in there. And some of the stuff that's even going on, like, I don't really consider, like, when you see the pharmaceutical industry and the banking industry making loads of money, I don't think that's helping people, to tell you the truth. That's the way I look at it. I'm not going to go sidetrack too much, or I'm not going to sidetrack on the pharmaceutical industry, but, actually you could look back and you could see, I know, and also I want to say this one caveat before I make this statement. There's a lot of stuff in this alternative medicine that's a lot of disinformation. I try to weed out what is disinformation, but there is a lot of flawed statistics in the pharmaceutical industries that are pushing all these drugs. And a lot of these drugs are being subsidized by the government, and which is being, where the money's coming from, it's being added to the debt. So in other words, a lot of times people are being given drugs by hospitals and stuff. They're low income, they're all this kind of garbage. So a lot of times that's adding to the GDP, right? Correct? But where's that money coming from? The money's actually coming from the government. Where's that money coming from? It's being added to the debt. So, like, I maintain that actually the very top 1% of 1%, 1 basis point, is actually making the most money in this country. But the GDP itself, it may be going up a little bit, but it's going up in a different way. It's not going up via the middle class. It's going up for the top echelons And actually, a lot of stuff that the products that are out there, that when you're talking about this GDP going up, it's in the banking and financial sector. If you look at the profitability of even individuals like Warren Buffett, the guy makes, I don't know, $1 million a day or something. I don't know what it is, or more than that. It's like it's becoming obvious that that's not really the real economy. So if you look at Warren Buffett, for example, and you say, what is he actually doing for anybody? That he's making $1 million something a day. Whatever the hell he's making, right? That's really what I'm getting at here, because what's going on is actually the real nuts and bolts, true economy in the United States has been falling apart since the late 90s. Now you would think the price of silver would be going up and the price of gold. Well, actually, since the late 90s, it has gone up a lot. But, we're going to see some other freaking things going on here pretty soon, because I expect more crazy movements. Now, I just also want to caution people about, when I'm bringing out some of these statistics, I know there's been a lot of stuff out there with, I'll mention it, web bots, Pastor Lindsey Williams, and all this kind of garbage. I do not put out that type of stuff. And I just noticed that, I don't know why it's being, why it takes off. It's being, I don't know what the hell the deal is, but it's all giddy rumors. It's garbage. It's garbage information. But it looks like the powers that be that are really crushing the economy in the United States in a very, very, very slow motion way. And it's not like the economy in the United States, or the stature of the United States, is going to go to like third-rate nation. But it's going to be diminished very slowly over a period of years. And this looks like it's policy of the elite. And again, I want to show you this. This is the drop-off. This is the year... See, 2000 right here. This is the year 2000. So, like, from about 2000 or right before 2000, was probably at the peak of the economy, retail sales of gasoline has been dropped by 75%. That's when it dropped off. This would be about the late 90s right here when this line starts. So, that tells you a lot, doesn't it? Now, don't think of it just like in the case of where you're talking about Mr. or Mrs. Suburbia or urbanite or rural person, whatever the hell it is, driving in a car. That's part of the equation, but it's also the equation where you're talking about transportation of goods and services, where everything's trucked in America. So when we're looking at the GDP, actually I can tell you right now, even that in the last several months, and also this last Christmas season, was probably the worst we had in many years, and it's been going down. Retail sales have been going down. And, I'm not pushing doom and gloom here and stuff like that, but I'm just telling you, there's a game going on with this deal. And this pretty much proves it. So, anyway, I just want to point this out because, some people might accuse me of being a little bit too lenient towards the major media. No, I don't. But I also realize a lot of the alternative media is loads and loads of disinformation for profit, giddy rumors, and total garbage. But the situation actually is not too cool in the United States. Not too cool. It's probably, I think it is deliberate policy, what's going on. But that really is a solid indicator. And like I said, when they're talking about the GDP going up, they're talking, if the banking and financial sector, or Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan, makes more money than ever they did before, and record profits, that's all included in the GDP. If doctors are making freaking umpteen dollars a year and stuff like that, and there's there's these behavioral freaking consultants and stuff like that, they're making all kinds of money. That's another hot market out there. It's like, back in the old days, you didn't even have that type of stuff. It's more like suck it up and do your job, and get the product out the door that's actually something solid that people can use, versus, all this, family consulting and behavioral things and drug industry and all this other garbage. But a lot of this stuff is even being provided to people for free because they supposedly can't afford it. But the thing is, what's going on is that is being subsidized by the government. And how's the government paying for it? The government's paying for it by adding more and more debt. Interesting scenario, man. So, in reality, the United States has been going, I hate to say it, but the United States has been in decline since at least the late 1990s. Has been for sure. Has been for sure. So it's a long, slow process, and I don't think it's not going to be where it's going. I think it's a plan. There's a method to the madness the way this game's gone. But the major media is always painting us a great picture, and like I said again about the GDP. A lot of it's in the pharmaceutical area, a lot of it's in the banking sector, it's in entertainment or whatever. It's in things that aren't actually needed by, the average person. Where we used to be strong in the United States was when we had manufacturing back here. Manufacturing's not totally gone in the United States. There is some manufacturing. It's still fairly strong. But the old game plan they tried was when they says, yeah, we're going to send all the manufacturing to China, and it'll be good for the United States, and we'll be the intellectual power, and we'll be the place that we're going to be like designing how things are going to be done instead of manufacturing. I knew that was a big sales pitch from day one, but we couldn't argue with anybody because they talked cute and had like the way they inflected their voice and everything. But I knew what the deal was, and from 20 years ago when they were pitching that garbage, and we could see what happened today. But anyway, just want to point this out because the number one statistic, actually, when you're looking at things in the most plain common sense way, it's telling you what's going on in the real economy, not with just driving, middle class America driving around or something like that, but that's telling you how many goods are actually being transported back and forth in the country, and how much raw materials being transported to manufacturing places or exchange of goods and services even amongst the smaller entrepreneurs. This retail sales of gasoline by refiners, that reflects a lot on the real nuts and bolts true strength of America. It's really been it's crashed since the late 90s. So I don't want to play like Alex Jones here and hey, the freaking sky is falling. But, there's a game going on. Just recognize it and don't let them, pull the wool over your eyes and BS you that everything's rosy, because it ain't. I'm sorry to say that.